Hi, welcome to the first video of Unit 4 in the month of November. We'll be looking at some vocabulary and grammar that we have seen so far, just as a review and maybe to help you understand a little bit more. Okay, so we begin with vocabulary. So we have be a procrastinator. Remember that a procrastinator is someone who is always leaving things for later, and then they have to do everything in a rush, right? So it's a problem. Also remember that the topic of the unit is shortcomings, which are basically things that are not very good about ourselves or our personality. So one of them could be being a procrastinator. Then we have be oversensitive, which is someone who takes criticism, for example, very badly, or when something happens, it affects them in a great way. So in a way that is kind of exaggerated in the eyes of other people. So they can be oversensitive. Be disorganized. I think the picture speaks for itself. It's when you cannot put things in order or you cannot keep them organized. If you are hot-tempered, it means that you get angry very easily or that you explode very easily against people when they make you angry. If you are negative, well, it means that you usually don't look at the bright side or you usually only look at the bad things of the situations. If you are a controlling person, it's a bit of an exaggeration, maybe, the picture, but if you are controlling, you always want people to do the things your way, and you always want to be in charge of everything. You are very bossy. You are very demanding with them. And if you are a perfectionist, well, also the picture speaks for itself. You want everything to be perfect to the point that you are never satisfied with any of the results, for example. So it can also be a shortcoming. Then we also had some phrases from the conversation on page 39. And these are phrases that, as per usual, have a very specific meaning, even if they use different words. So for example, if you take something well, it means that you, even if there's a bad situation, you don't take it personally or you try to look at the good side of things. Okay, so you take something well, even though it was not a very positive situation. If you make a big issue out of something, it means that even if that something is very, very small, like unimportant or just a small detail, you make a big issue out of it if you exaggerate it or if you get very angry about it, even though it's something very small. If you take it out on someone, like a friend, it means that, for example, this person looks very angry and they look like they are screaming or being angry at their friend who looks very confused. So usually what happens is that if you take it out on someone, that person has nothing to do with your anger, like they have nothing to do with the situation, but you still like scream at them or you still are rude towards them, even though it's not their fault, right? So this is what in Spanish we know as desquitarse. So if you do that with a friend, then it could be something really bad. If you bring something up with someone, it means that you want to talk about something, you want to discuss something, and you bring up the topic of the conversation. Usually with a phrase like "I would like to mention" or any other phrase that indicates that you want to talk about something in particular. If you lose your cool, it means that suddenly you can be like, one moment you can be very calm or just normal, and then you just completely lose your cool. You get angry, you get upset, or you start doing very erratic things. This one means walk on eggshells. If you walk on eggshells, it means that you try to be really, really careful not to do or say something that will make another person angry. Usually that other person is very sensitive or gets angry very easily. So walking on eggshells is a metaphor or is a phrase that indicates that you're always you're always taking care of what you say or what you do, because the other person is very it's easy to make them angry. Okay. In this case, this person um, she looks distressed, or she looks very like upset about the situation, very tired. When something sets you off, it means that it causes you to be angry. So in this case, maybe the girl's behavior sets the mom off. So it makes her feel angry or uncomfortable or just in a bad way. When you tell someone off, you criticize their behavior or you try to correct their behavior. This is what in Spanish we know as regañar, like the mom is doing with her child. Okay, and here we are showing how two people pick up the pieces. When you pick up the pieces of a relationship or a friendship, it means that previously there was a bad situation that maybe broke the relationship a little bit. So if you pick up the pieces, then you try to fix what happened. Again, this could be with friends, a romantic partner, even family members. Okay, you can pick up the pieces of a relationship or a friendship. So that's the vocabulary. Very interesting vocabulary. It has a lot to do with emotions, obviously, and personality as well. Now, in terms of grammar, we're going to see here in a moment. So we're basically going to talk about conditions. Let's look at some examples. Okay, so we have different situations that we can talk about with conditions. The first one we're going to look at is when there is absolutely no way to affect or change the situation in which you are in. When we want to express something like that, we can use the phrase even if. Even if I try to stay organized, my room is always a mess. So no matter how hard you try and no matter what you do, you can never stay organized. Okay, so again, the word or the expression even if is used to express that there's absolutely no way to affect or change the situation. So no matter what you do, my room or her room is always a mess. Another example, she never wants to go out even if she has time. So it doesn't matter if she has time or not, she never wants to go out with them. We can also use another phrase, which is whether or not. Whether or not the boss told him, Jack already knew he was going to be fired. So it doesn't really matter that the boss told him or not, he already knew, maybe from another person. Time is still going to pass by, whether or not you decide to use it smartly. Okay, so it doesn't matter how you decide to use your time, it's still going to go by, to pass by, sorry. So again, even if and whether or not express that no condition, like no condition can change the result in this case. Now, in most cases, even if is interchangeable with whether or not. We can use whatever we want. This is not true for all of the sentences, but we're going to look at very particular examples where you have to be careful. Most of the time, you can change it. For example, here I can say, well, here is one of those cases, actually. This is one of those cases where even if doesn't really sound as good. Even if the boss told him, Jack already knew he was going to be fired. Grammatically speaking, it works. It just doesn't sound as good. But here we could say time is still going to pass by, even if you decide to use it smartly. That could be one possibility. Okay, so they could be interchangeable, but not in all of the sentences, or not in all of the sentences, they will sound natural. Okay. One thing to notice though is the commas, the use of commas. The rule is that if the phrase comes first, then in the middle, we have a comma. If the phrase comes second or in the middle, we don't, oh, actually, I made a mistake here. Yes, I made a mistake here. I'm gonna fix it. There we go. Okay, so it shouldn't have a comma. Very good. Because it doesn't have a comma if it goes in the middle. In Spanish, this would be translated as, for example, incluso si trato de estar organizada, mi habitación siempre es un desastre. Ella nunca quiere salir con nosotros, incluso si tiene el tiempo. Whether or not is more difficult to put in Spanish, but it's basically like, ya sea que el jefe le dijera o no, you have to be careful there because this in Spanish doesn't go here, it goes at the end. Ya sea que el jefe le dijera o no, Jack ya sabía que iba a ser despedido. El tiempo va a seguir pasando, incluso o ya sea que decidas utilizarlo o no. Okay, so it's a little bit more complicated with whether or not in Spanish because we separate the phrase. Let's go on to the next situation. When a condition is necessary, like absolutely necessary, in order for something to happen, we can express it with only if. We will arrive on time only if we leave right now. So the only way that we can arrive on time is if we leave right now. That's really, really important. Or Sally behaves well only if her parents are around. She never behaves well in other situations. Now, only if is kind of difficult to use. The reason for that is the following. First of all, there are no commas in these sentences at all. Okay, so no commas at all in these sentences. And the second reason is the following. When only if comes first, like in these sentences, the next sentence, like the other subject and verb, need to be inverted. This usually means, or this could mean, that we need to add auxiliary verbs when necessary. Let me show you what I mean. So these two sentences are exactly the same. So this is where the sentence cuts, okay? So only if we leave right now. Only if we leave right now, that's exactly the same. Notice the other part. We will, subject and verb, we will arrive on time. In the other one, it's will we arrive on time. Only if we leave right now, will we arrive on time. So this could be very confusing because it's not a question. It's definitely not a question. It's something that happens in some conditional sentences. It's a subject-verb inversion. Now, with verbs such as will, it's easy because we only need to change it literally. So we just change places and that's it. We don't have to do anything else. But when we have sentences such as this one, Sally behaves well only if her parents are around. Only if her parents are around. Let's take a look at this. So here you have Sally behaves. So you have a subject and a verb. The problem is that if we only change it to behave Sally, that doesn't work. That definitely doesn't have the structure that we need. So in this case, because this is present simple, we need to add an auxiliary verb. Only if her parents are around does Sally behave. So the S, so the S that was here technically transforms into the auxiliary verb does. Only if her parents are around does Sally behave well. Now, there's no specific reason for this happening. Just accept it, just learn it and practice it, and you'll do fine, okay? So only if is honestly the most difficult one that you have to learn to use, and only because of this. Because if you do it like normally, if you begin the sentence with the normal clause and then you put only if, you have no problem. The sentence stays the same. It's only in the situations where only if begins the sentence that you have a problem, basically. Okay, so technically speaking, you are free not to use it, not to use that structure, but you still need to learn that this is the correct way to do it. Okay, then we have another type of sentence, which is how to express the consequence of an action or lack of an action. And here's where we use unless. For example, oh, you cannot really see this. There we go. Okay, so for example, unless you start now, you won't be able to finish your report on time. We could technically change unless for a negative condition. If you don't start now, you won't be able to finish your report on time, which basically has the same meaning, okay? So unless shows that if the condition doesn't happen, then that will be your result. It would have been impossible to do this unless you had helped us. It would have been impossible to do this if you hadn't helped us. Again, we have like a negative, not a negative meaning, but we could change it for a negative sentence and it would still have the same meaning. So this is a little bit easier than the previous one. The same as the first conditional, we use commas if the adverb clause comes first. So unless you start now, you won't be able to finish. It would have been impossible to do this unless there is no comma because it comes in the middle. And here is just a small annotation about unless being similar to if not, which I just explained to you. Okay, again, please remember that this is generally speaking. It doesn't mean that it's the rule 100% of the times, because there are exceptions to the rule, like always. But generally speaking, these are the rules that we have to follow in the case of unless. Okay, similar to the previous one, we have the expression otherwise. Otherwise is very similar to unless, but grammatically speaking, there's a difference. Let's see. You can also use otherwise, but some changes need to be done to the sentence. And you need to be careful with this in case you are transforming the sentence. For example, unless you start now, this is the original sentence. Unless you start now, you won't be able to finish your report on time. So we can express this with the word otherwise, but we need to rephrase it a little bit. You should start your report now. Otherwise, you won't be able to finish it on time. Even if we change some words, like maybe the word should, because it's not, like this word is not in the original one, but we need to change it or we need to transform the sentence a little bit more so that it has the same meaning, okay? By now, you should try to remember that language is not like mathematics. There's not only one correct way of getting to the result, which is communication. You can change the language, you can play with the language and transform the sentences however you think would be better to communicate your ideas. In this case, there are many different ways we could have said this other sentence. This is the one I chose, but there are other possibilities as well. Okay, so that basically is the ending of the first video. It's a little bit long, but remember that we need to cover the content of 3 hours in a kind of short video, and this is the best I could do. I'm going to be leaving a link for you to practice in the not a link, sorry. I'm going to be sending some exercises in a PDF format for you to do. We started doing them last class, but we didn't finish, and we only did it in a game format. So now we're going to do it in a written form for you to practice. And for the people who were not at the class during that time, well, you can still practice as well. So that's the end of this video. I hope you watch it before class, and if you have any questions, let me know when we see each other again. Bye-bye.